Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me again on a press feed webinar. This webinar today, we're going to be talking about telling your brand story with an online newsroom. And I would appreciate it if you could just quickly put into the question area, can you see my screen and can you hear me? Just let me see some yeses, please. Just so I know we're not having any technical problems. Thank you, Lisa. That's awesome. Great. Okay, great. So that's perfect. Right, so let's just dive in and get going. Where is this thing that I want to do? Okay, so that's fine. All right. So today we're going to be talking about why a newsroom is a really, really good vehicle for telling your brand story. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, that's my handle @SallyFalco or the company @PressFeed. And if you're going to tweet during this presentation, please, it would be fun if you could use the hashtag #OwnTheNews. I am the author of this book, Smart News, How to Write Branded Content that Gets Found in Search and Shared on Social Media. You can get it in Amazon. Just do a search for my name, Falco, and Smart News, and you'll find it right away. So this is very comprehensive on how to write your branded content so that it does get found in search and shared in social media. So why should we even be bothering about a digital newsroom? What's the big deal? Well, many brands, almost all brands today, are publishing some form of content. So it's not just advertising on the sidebars with display ads and things like that. We really are getting into the situation where it's very acceptable. It's a big part of marketing and PR, and brand content is in fact becoming competition to the traditional media for our attention. So much so that some of the major media outlets are in fact working with brands with what they call native advertising, which when I was a young girl 500 years ago, it was more called advertorial. But there are many company representatives and agency representatives who are blogging for sites like Forbes, Fast Company, Entrepreneur, Inc. Magazine. All of these media outlets are looking for content, and they're very open to the idea of brand content. So this is something that is happening, and it's becoming increasingly a part of what we do. And the public is beginning to expect this. They want to see, how does your product fit into their lifestyle? They don't just want to hear about, this is my product, this is what it does. It has 3 blue widgets and 4 pink widgets, and this one turns left and this one turns right. They actually want to know more about how to use it, how it's going to really help them to achieve their lifestyle goals. And that's what you can do with this branded content. So it's really important to figure out what your story is. And to tell the brand story, you need to have 3 things. It needs to be very intentional. You can't do this on a throw spaghetti against the wall strategy. You absolutely need a very solid content strategy and a brand. It has to fit with your brand strategy. It has to be constant. Once you start doing this, it's no good saying, well, we'll start a blog and then we'll blog like crazy for 2 months, and then we figure out this takes a lot of resources and it takes time, and I'm busy, and wow, I didn't blog this week, and I didn't blog that week either, and oh my goodness, we didn't blog for the whole month. That's not going to work. First of all, if you did get a spot blogging for one of the big media outlets, If you don't fulfill your content requirements, you won't be blogging for them for very long. And it's got to be very laser focused on the identity of your brand, and it's got to be on message. So there's a lot that has to go into telling the brand story before you even think about what vehicle you're going to use. You have to think about what the story is. So the first thing to do, please excuse me, is to figure out who you are as a brand. So the first part of that is figuring out your identity. And the identity is a couple of things. It's how you look, and that encompasses a really broad range of things. What does your physical presence look like if you're a brick and mortar store? If not, what does your website look like? What do your staff look like? What do your delivery trucks look like? How do they drive? How do your salespeople come across when they go to see clients or they call? What does your receptionist do when she answers the phone? When people walk in to your store or your building or whatever it is, how do they feel? What does it look like? All of this communicates. Remember that we're very visual creatures as humans, very, very visual. And whether this is fair or not fair is entirely another conversation, but we do make snap judgments on what we see. And we hear all the things, don't judge a book by its cover, whatever, but you have to just understand that we do. We just absolutely do. So it does make an impression. We make judgments by what we see. So if we walk into a hotel and it isn't clean and it's kind of run down and there are strange people in the foyer and nobody takes care of us when we get to the reception desk, we already in those 3 seconds have decided this is not such a great place. So the how you look is quite important. The next part of it is what do you say? And these, this is in every type of communication. It's face-to-face communication, it's written communication, it's what they read on the net, it's everything, absolutely everything. Anything that is communicated from you about the brand, that's what you say. And of course, it's also your mission statement, your values, how you are positioning yourself as we say this is what we are and who we are. And then most important of all is where the rubber meets the road is what you do. Because how you look and what you say could be amazing, but if what you do doesn't match up with that, it's going to cause a problem. So just a current case in point is the big Volkswagen crisis. We know how they look. We know what they've said all these years about how they, what they do and how they make their vehicles and they're great people and whatever. And now we discover that what they do is not that. And there was, I tweeted yesterday or the day before, their stock price is looking quite sad as a result of this. So it can have, if there's no congruence between how you look and what you say and what you do, it's going to cause you a major big problem. So those are all the things that will form your identity. And that's at the basis of who you are as a brand. Now, in any story, there's one main character. He's the protagonist, he, she, but for our purposes, it's the brand. The brand is the hero of the story. And as with any story, there's going to be a timeline. It's going to start and it's going to continue. And hopefully it's going to continue and continue. We don't really want the story to end. So it's just a question of having that identity, constantly reinforcing this identity of the hero and keeping that brand at the center of the story as you move along. Always the constant staying on message and always being true to your values. That's the constant part of it. And that's how you tell the brand story. So it's very real to me that every single story, let me backtrack, every single business has a story. There is a story in any kind of business. And I've spoken to some that the business owner said to me, there can't possibly be a story here. This is the most boring business in the universe. But believe me, there was a story there. There is always a story. You just have to figure out what it is. Figure out those first things. Look at the identity. Figure out what you stand for and what it is that you do and what your goals and dreams are as a brand, what your mission statement and your values are. And then start looking how the story developed. Where did you start? People find stories really interesting. And most stories have a beginning, and your business will have a beginning. So how did this all start? How did it happen? Who started it? What was their idea? How did it grow? How did you do? Did it go up and down like most people do? Was it a major overnight success? This is all part of the story. What challenges did you run into? What successes did you have? What losses and failures did you have? This makes you very human when you tell these stories about the brand. Was there something that happened that wasn't so wonderful? And then how did you come back from that? Did you maybe have a hard time during the recession and now everything is going well again? Was there some product that you did that didn't work out? And then tell your customer stories, because that validates the brand story. If you have really great customer stories of how your business has helped that customer grow and what problems it solved for that customer, this is a huge part of your brand story. And then, of course, media coverage, because third-party endorsement from the media and big bloggers today count just as much. In fact, in the most recent September 15 top news sites, number one is Yahoo News, number two is Google News, and we'll get to that in a minute, and the number three is the Huffington Post. And then only do we get into traditional media. So search and bloggers are really important in telling your brand story right now. So these are all things you have to think about when you're telling your brand story. And once you have all of this figured out and you have a content strategy of how you're going to tell the brand story and what kind of things you need to tell, excuse me, then we can we can get into what kind of content are you going to have to create. So this was from an article in Forbes, and they were saying, woven together intentionally and constantly, these elements, the ones we've just been talking about, the origins and the growths and the successes and the failures, all those things, if you weave these together intentionally and constantly, these elements will create a tapestry that tells your brand story. And that's what you're looking for. And you need this tapestry to be there in a place where people who come to your website can find this beautiful tapestry that instantly tells your brand story. So what kind of content are you going to be creating? You definitely have to start to think like a traditional newsroom. You are the newsroom for the brand. So you have to act like a traditional newsroom. You have to think like reporters. You should have somebody who's wearing the hat of the editor. You should have graphic designers that can produce all the visual material that you're going to need. Because just like the traditional media has had to embrace all forms of content, so too does every brand have to do this. It's really important to do that. And then you're going to have to monitor and comment on industry news. It's not enough just to tell your story and content only about your brand. You need to take a slightly bigger picture and think about what's going on in your industry and publish commentary from your experts about things that are happening in the industry. You should also be conducting interviews with other people, not your competitors, obviously, but big names in the industry, speakers at conferences, analysts, and then go to events and report on what happens at those conferences so that you become genuinely a news source about your industry. So we want to be covered by the media, and that is a big part of your newsroom. So let's have a look at what the media actually wants. You need to provide content to newsrooms that they don't have the resources to cover anymore. Now, we all know that the media has been going through a very tough time. There have been a huge number of layoffs in the newsrooms. In fact, we're down to numbers. The last time we had so few reporters and editors in the newsroom was back in the 1970s. So they are very stretched for resources. A lot of the older journalists who really understood their beat and had lots of contacts and experts to talk to are no longer there. So you also have younger journalists, not quite as hatted, trained, knowledgeable, connected, and they're expected to do more than one beat. And in many cases, they don't have the in-depth knowledge of that beat, so they have to find outside resources to talk to. This is great for us, but you need to provide this kind of content in your newsroom so that the media will see that this is a part of your brand story, is the knowledge that you have, that you bring to the table. And then you can also look at creating in-depth stories that the media just simply can't cover on their own. They don't have the time, the researchers, the fact checkers, they just can't do it. So if you can do that and then offer that whole package to the media, that can get you really good coverage. Or just offer access to other resources and experts that they may not know about. So your newsroom should pretty much at a glance show whoever is coming there, whether it's the media, a blogger, a reporter, a public, a prospective customer, an analyst, whoever they are going to be looking at your newsroom. There is research that shows that when people want to find out what's going on with a company, they know that the most recent information is going to be in their newsroom. So, two things. There should be a very prominent link to your newsroom right on the homepage. And then in your newsroom, it should be visual. Again, please remember that we're visual people. We process visual content something like 60,000 times faster than text. We retain it better. So it's very important for you to have a visual newsroom. Here are some of the things you definitely should think about having in your newsroom. There should be a featured story. And this should be something that you're currently wanting to pitch to the media. A good story with some in-depth research, background, whatever. Something that they won't have seen everywhere else. And then every time you have something new to pitch, you put that in your featured story. You should have video and images. So you can see that just on at this little first arrow on the left, there's videos and images there. And there's a gallery, a full gallery of videos and images. In your images, you should have infographics and charts. This is something that the media really likes. If you have great statistics, if you've been doing some research, I was just on a webinar earlier this morning from a company called Karma, C-A-R-M-A. They do media and PR measurement. And they were just releasing the results of a big survey that they had done. Now that's the perfect time to create charts and infographics of this information that you've gathered. The media really likes those, and it also tends to get shared well in social media. You should be doing trend stories about what's happening in the industry, and you should have an expert database. So down here you can see there are experts in this one. That's the bottom on the left-hand side of your screen. That the bottom red arrow is pointing to the expert database. Now when you click on that expert, it'll bring you to a page with more information about that expert, and you can also put in images and a video of that expert talking about his area of expertise. Remember again that all media, whether it's radio, newspapers, magazine, TV, blogs, whatever it is, they all use every single kind of content. They are going to want written content, but they're going to want images, and they definitely want video. So the days of saying, well, I can't send just a text press release to a TV station, or I can't send a video to a radio station or a magazine, those days are so over. Everybody knows that visuals get more eyeballs, they attract attention, they keep people on the page, they get more engagement, they get more clicks. So everyone is looking for the visual. And the more visuals that you can supply, really good quality original images and original video, beg your pardon. And something to think about when you are telling these stories, each little piece of content that you create is a story in and of itself, but it's also part of the bigger brand story. So when you're writing a release or an article or a blog post or creating an image or creating a video, whatever it is that you're doing, it has its own little story that it has to tell, but it also, in the bigger picture, if you were to look at it in a whole visual newsroom like this, it has to tell a part of your brand story. You can't have one piece that kind of doesn't agree with the other pieces. So that's something to think about. So why are we concerned with the search engines? What's that got to do with anything? Well, take a look at this. This was a headline that came out in January of this year. Google overtakes traditional media to become the most trusted news source. This was from the 2015 Edelman Trust Barometer. They surveyed 27,000 people across the globe. And in terms of media sources, search engines are now the most trusted. It's pretty crazy, huh? So if you are not at this point a really expert optimizer, it's absolutely time to do that. This is definitely one of the 15 digital skills you have to learn in 2015 is SEO. Not to the point that you have to be able to optimize an entire website. That's not your job. But as a PR person, it is your job to optimize every single piece of content that comes out of your department or your agency, because it's got to show up in Google. This is where people are going. And Yahoo News and Google News. When it comes to actual search, Google obviously is number one. But when it comes to news search, Yahoo News is still, and they're hanging on a bit by a thread at this point. Google is nipping so hard at their heels. But they are, Yahoo News, beg your pardon. Yahoo News is still number one as a news source. Google News is number two, and then, as I said earlier, the Huffington Post, and then we get into the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, blah, blah, blah. But it's really interesting to see that search engines are now the most trusted media source for general news and information. So this is your job, is to produce the news and information for your brand or for your clients. You absolutely have to make sure that it shows up in search engines if that is the most trusted media source. So here's one example. For this company, David Lerner Associates, when you search in Google, the number 2 result is their newsroom, like right there. That should happen with every single brand. It's a vital part of telling your brand story. Your website should show up number 1, but your newsroom should be right there. They should never have to go and look for it. So this is the press feed newsroom. And as you can see, we have the featured story, we have featured videos, we've got an image gallery, a video gallery, we've got press contacts, we have all the things that the public and analysts and journalists want. It is interesting to me that when I do user testing and surveys with journalists particularly, they really, really like this layout. They find it easy. It's very easy for them to find stuff, and they're under a lot of pressure. So the comments that I always get is, you kind of hear the big exhale. Oh, oh, what a pleasure. This is so nice. This is so easy. Why doesn't everybody have one like this? So let's look at what kind of content you have to do for Google. Just a few months ago, we had a really large update to the Google algorithm. It's the Panda update. It's the first major Panda update since 2011. It has to do with the value and the quality of the content. It's a big focus on quality of content. And these are the things that the Panda update is looking for. Original content. So they're very strong on any duplicate content. If there's a piece of news that's been seen somewhere else, and you regurgitate that, they're not going to give you any Google juice or brownie points for it. So you have to be writing really good original content. They want to see it constantly updated. Now, that could be a blog. It's probably not your website. But a newsroom should be constantly updated. That's why a newsroom is really good as a vehicle to tell your brand story, because it's going to have all the elements you need, and it's going to also feed the Panda update. So it's going to be very visible in search. They want really in-depth, rich content. Google has a phrase that they use where they refer to bad content in what they view as bad content. Google calls it thin content. And I think that communicates. If you're writing something with a little bit of fluff and not much substance to it, that's what Google calls thin content. So when you're writing for your newsroom, it should really be substantive, in-depth stuff. And they want to see that you have some authority on the subject. They gauge that by how often you write about it. So going back to this, the one I showed you a minute ago, David Lerner Associates, a lot of what they do has to do with seniors in retirement. So they write a lot about what happens when you retire and your Social Security and long-term care, and how do you save for retirement, and what happens if, and what about this and what about that. So by the time they've been writing in their newsroom about retirement and retirement planning for 3 or 4 years, Google does see them as an authority on that subject. In just the same way that ESPN would be seen as an authority on sports, or you get the idea. And they want rich media. That means visuals. And something just to keep in mind when you are thinking about telling your story visually, and how the visual, the image, the infographic or the video is going to fit in with the story that you've written, the article, the press release, what blog post, whatever. Don't write this piece first and then go, well, what kind of picture could I put with this? You should really do it the other way around. You should start thinking visually and get the idea of the piece that you're going to write, and then go, how could I tell this visually? What visual is going to actually give the viewer or the reader a deeper experience and understanding of what I've just written here? What kind of visual would extend and enhance what I've written? So it's not a case of saying, well, I'm going to write something about going on a vacation to Belize and then say, well, can I find some stock photo of a beach in Belize? Yes, it'll give them a bit of a visual. It'll give them a bit more reality, because a picture really is worth 1,000 words. It turns out it really, really is. But you've got to, it's the original images that everyone is after. It's this original content. If there's any way that you can get something that's absolutely original and really gives more of the story, that would be what you're looking for. And then, of course, it has to be optimized. And there's quite a bit it's just there's some rules that go with the optimized, and those, of course, are all in the book. Okay, so what makes a newsroom really great? First of all, what you're putting in there must be more than just press releases. You've got to have this original content. It's got to be content that the media and the public will value. It'll be interesting to them, something they would want to read, something they might want to share. You're going to need some talent. You are definitely going to need technology, and you're going to need data and analytics, because all of this, the success of this, is to a large degree driven by your ability to see what's working and what's not working. So this is another one of the 15 skills you really need, digital skills that we all need desperately, is the ability to do analytics and to analyze data. Google Analytics is a simple program. It's not that hard to learn. And we've actually created a custom PR dashboard. And if you email me or tweet to me, I can send you the link. It's a free dashboard you can download that gets you started. Now, if your newsroom still looks like this, and I know that many, many brands' newsrooms do still look like this, simply all text, just a list of press releases, no images, no videos, not even a link to anything. It's really time to upgrade and get into a visual and digital newsroom. Here's another one. Okay, still very text only. This is a newsroom that I actually like. It's from the Vanderbilt University. They built this in WordPress. The one thing with building your own newsroom in WordPress is that you are going to have to find somebody who's a WordPress programmer, because even the news magazine themes that WordPress has won't give you exactly all the elements that you're going to need in a newsroom. And then, so, you know, it's nice that WordPress has all these themes and it's free, but it kind of isn't free, because you have to go and find a programmer who will tweak it and make it into what you want. And then it's now a custom newsroom, and you're reliant on that person. So you have to make sure that they're around so that they can be there to support you, because WordPress just on its own has absolutely no support. And as a business, you definitely don't want to be having problems with your newsroom and having nobody to call. So a lot of the bigger businesses are doing this, and they're building their own newsrooms, and they're becoming media companies like Coke and Red Bull and Marks and Spencer in England. But can little businesses, small, medium businesses, can also do this? Absolutely. You just have to be smart with technology. There's a lot of great technology out there. There are several hosted newsrooms with visual features. We're not the only ones who do this. There are a bunch of others. So get yourself a good hosted newsroom. Make sure that it has all these features. And then train your team to curate industry news and comment on that industry news and to create original content. Find the people who are great writers in your team and really get them tuned in to how to do this. There are a lot of reporters, by the way, that have been laid off who are coming over to the PR dark side and they write fantastically for brand stories, I have to tell you. So here are some content ideas. You should be writing the company news. There is still a place for press releases. Some of the things just have to be put in a press release. Just make sure that it isn't a deathly boring press release written like they used to be written in 1906 when they were first started. And bear in mind that that format was started specifically for print media. So if you're going to do that inverted triangle, ABC company today announced that blah, 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 and then blow smoke and some quotes and blah, blah, blah. That really is not what journalists are looking for today. The best way to do your press releases is to have them be multimedia, have them in a newsroom, have all the facts and figures, in fact, have a little news capsule. So you have the release, you have the fact sheet, you have the images, you have the videos, you have the expert, everything there, all in your newsroom. And then send an email to the journalist with a little one paragraph and say, here's the pitch and here's the link and everything you need to know is in my newsroom, and let them go and take a look. You do need industry trends, you need product knowledge. How-tos are amazing. And every company has heaps of knowledge about their product or service. And the public is coming looking for this stuff. How-to videos are one of the biggest categories that are viewed on YouTube. You can do all your fact sheets. You can make these little news capsules. You definitely need an expert database. You should be doing original images and videos and making sure that wherever you have an image or a video in your newsroom, you're also giving the blogger or the reporter the embed code so that they can use that image or video with one copy, paste, and click, and that's it. You should be telling your customer stories. There should be a section in your newsroom about the company history. That's a big part. That's the origin of the story. The milestones is part of the story. Events that you've done in the past and that you're doing in the future. The public and the media want to see your social content. So you can put the links directly to all your social content in your newsroom. You can even bring it in. You can get a feed of your Facebook posts and your Twitter posts and bring them all in and put them into the newsroom because it is a part of your brand story. Analyst coverage, frontline stories, and by that I mean, what are your employees doing in the field? What interesting things do they do? Are you in the kind of industry where they're doing amazing and interesting things and running into fantastic stories? For instance, utilities, people that supply power, their guys have fantastic stories. CPS Energy in Texas has given all their frontline guys phones with cameras, and they're sending back stories to the PR department. And then do a section on employee spotlights. People really want to connect with the company. The whole idea of this online digital social is that people love the idea of really connecting with a company. And a brand isn't the brick and mortar. It isn't the things of a business, it's the people. So they really want to know who the people are and what they do and what they think and what are they up to and what kind of a person is the CEO and who's the guy that I talk to when I call for tech support. All those kind of things make your brand more human, and they're a huge part of your brand story. So all of this should be available in your newsroom, and it should be in a layout that is easy to see. When I look at it with one glance, I'm seeing the brand story. So this was Jelly Belly. This is David Lerner's full newsroom. And when you go in the back of Pressfeed, this is what it looks like. It's very easy and simple to use. You can see that you can add into the different channels. You can go to your media gallery. You can add news coverage. You can put in events. You can put in your contacts. And those would be experts, executives, press. And then in the profile is where you would put your company history. So there's a lot you can do there. Oh, that's in the wrong place. And what does all of this do? It gets you a lot more traffic to the newsroom. It attracts the public. It attracts the media. It attracts analysts. It's the kind of place possible investors would go to look. You get more media coverage and you definitely get more engagement. Okay. So here you can see with just one where there was traffic to their newsroom going along pretty steadily, and then they added a newsroom and you see the big spike. And then when they stopped publishing their content regularly, it dropped off again. And here are just some stats on engagement, which is all about trusted editorial content and how you get engagement through content. Just one little caveat. Once you have a visual newsroom like this, you do still have to do outreach to the bloggers and to the media. They're not miraculously going to know that you have all this content. You do still have to do that media outreach, but at least you're now telling them, I have this newsroom with everything you need. Come and take a look. Here's a picture of our new featured story. Link, there it is. So this was from the CVB in Winston-Salem. And it took them about 3 or 4 months, I would say, till they got to this point where most of the reporters and bloggers that they were dealing with were now aware that they had a newsroom and they had subscribed to the RSS feed. And so every time they put something in, those bloggers and journalists were automatically alerted. I would suggest for really good results that you combine this newsroom with a social dashboard of some kind. There are several of those, Hootsuite, Sprout Social. The one I like is called Sendable. With Sendable, you can also import your media lists and you can email the reporters and the bloggers. You can post to all your social accounts. You can schedule your posts. You can do all the monitoring for your curating. So it makes it's kind of the other side of collecting and posting the social part of the newsroom. And you get all that. So if you have any questions, let me just go back into my little dashboard and see if you guys have asked any questions. I always battle to get this thing to come out of here so I can see it. What platform is the Pressfeed newsroom based on? It was built, it was custom built. It's built in PHP, but it's not based on Drupal or WordPress or anything like that. So that is the only question that I have right now. Anybody else have a question? Well, thanks. I'm glad you found it informative. And I'll keep you all informed. And our next one will be probably the last week of October. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we have recorded it. If you want to share it or look at it again, it'll probably be in the press feed newsroom by about Monday of next week. Thank you. That's the end of the webinar. Thank you very much for being with me today.